Hi, I am Dee Dee Jones. I'm an associate pastor right here at Lovers Lane United Methodist Church. I am so excited because we have part 2 of Andrea Tabor. She is with us today. And of course, my bestie and bro over here, Randy, is helping me out today.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
And thank you. There's a lot of hair with me and you here as compared to when the boss is here.
So
Exactly.
get locked together.
Exactly. So part 1, we kind of talked about what 12-step is about. So that's kind of cool. But I think today we kind of want to talk about you.
Yeah.
We want to hear your story of because what great explanation and how you walked us through that and what that looks like. But how do you end up there? So what do you think, Grandbro?
Yeah, one of the great things about this podcast is we talk about hope. And I was on this podcast sharing my own personal story of hope. And I love the podcast because it does bring out that realness and sort of transparency about us as people and individuals. And especially when you might have a bit of a platform where people see you operating and running a 12-step ministry and a program, but don't really know much about you as a person.
Right.
And sort of what that looks like in your life. I'm curious what hope means to you, how you found hope, maybe in a time where you thought there was no hope or where you needed hope the most?
Gosh, I got that question and I've been kind of reading it and going through it in my mind. And I think that, I have found it in different parts of my life journey.
Wow.
It's changed. So, I think that, today, right now, I look to my faith, which gives me hope, and God that gives me hope and keeps me sustained. But I think that at least in today's journey with 12-step ministry, when someone comes to me for some reason and says, I can't do it. I can't do it. I've tried over and over and over to get sobriety for whatever, it was that is the affliction, but, I can't. And that's where I think God has given me I don't know, I've been selected, I believe, for a certain reason, not only to be the vessel, but to be able to see a difficult moment like that and go, but wait a minute.
Right.
What else is there to that?
Yeah.
And there is hope. You may not feel like you can do it, but let's look at the hopeful side of not feeling like you can.
Is that common? Do you feel like that's common in individuals that come through the program?
I think that people who have been sober for a long time probably see that too.
Okay.
And that's why they stay in the program. That's why they work the 12-step by giving it back. I think that's a real important thing because we don't want to be part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution. And so when you look in solution, that's hope because now we have a plan,
Yeah.
right?
Starts with a plan.
Exactly. It starts with a plan, and plan equals hope. And so I think that, I find hope in difficult situations, and it's probably been because of my own journey. And going, I'm all messed up, so there's got to be something different than this. And so even in the midst of my own pain, going, there's still the other side. And so somewhere in there, hope has been in there in that way, I think.
So when has hope found you? Have you been that person that has said, I can't do this?
Yes, I have my own recovery journey. I started with really bad behavior in high school. My brother, who's a couple of years younger than I, he became addicted to things very early in life. He says 11. I don't know if it was 11 because, I would have only been 13 years old. So he was just a pain in my side, So,
Sure.
But as time went on, his difficulties became something that overtook the family.
Okay.
And my mom was a single mom, and her attention had to go to the 6th child.
Yeah.
So it was all on him. So that gave me the opportunity to kind of be free. to do whatever it was that I was doing. And, I mean, I wasn't doing anything really terrible, but had bad relationship with boys and men. And, I drank and I did my fair share of drugs. But that was never really my thing, the drugs and alcohol. But the sexual behavior turns out that was really a big issue for me. And so as my brother is getting all the attention from the family, when I said I want to move out at 16, my mom said, fine, go. I can't handle both of you.
Wow.
And I was having to play a lot of parenting during that time. I'd go pick my brother up out of the dirt somewhere, or he'd be hallucinating and I'd have to put him in the shower. So there were some things that I did have to do, but so the addiction cycle was early. My grandfather was an alcoholic till he was 70.
Wow.
He got sober at 70. So, I believe that this is inherited. I think there's a gene somewhere in there, and it's up for, all kinds of debate. But when you look at the trajectory of things, how can you not, right?
Absolutely.
So, I had my fair share of trouble. I think that probably I didn't have a male figure early in my life. And I always wanted that comfort of that. And how I found it was in, multiple sexual partners and sexual behavior. And I drank and I did drugs in order to release my inhibitions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And to cope with the addiction.
Exactly.
Right.
And going, well, I really, not even thinking I really like this part of it. I'm getting the attention and I'm feeling like I'm somebody. As I'm being with a man, it's like, well, wait a minute. And anybody that you talk to that has sexual addiction as their affliction, usually it started out them thinking that they had a drug or alcohol problem.
Interesting.
90%.
Interesting. Okay.
That the sex addiction actually comes out after the sobriety from all of that.
So
they
it just
realize.
masks it, is what
Just
you're saying.
masks it,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And so, my journey for the next 5 years was really terrible. I had multiple abortions. That was seemed like birth control at the time. I was really living a life, not intentionally, but I'd climb over the balconies. I would, he's cheating. All of this craziness that would go on in my mind, not really realizing what was going on. I just thought, well, this is how people act, I guess. And I gave a daughter up for adoption in the midst of all of that. So, there was a lot of struggles that I went through. And I think that women who struggle with this, it's probably harder for people to understand. They probably automatically think prostitution or something like that.
Right.
That was never it for me. I just felt like I was someone when I was with a man. I just felt
it was the next fix.
Yeah, it was the love. And so
Yeah.
when you talk about sex addiction, there's sex and love addiction, and they get all mixed up in there. And there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on. And so there's not a lot of women that talk about this outside because abortion is a crazy topic. They're like, why didn't you? Well, I don't know why I did. I can't
Especially
answer
at
it.
the time.
Yeah, I can't answer it. I can't answer the why, except for and why it continued until, it just had to, I knew my life was out of control. So I started going to SLAA meetings, sex and love addictions, sex addict meetings in California, which they were way ahead of the time.
Right.
And then I got pregnant with my daughter, and I said, this is it. This is the end.
Wow.
So she really saved me. She really saved me.
So what was the point that led up to you going to the first meeting? Like what clicked in your mind that said, I need help?
I thought it was alcohol first.
Okay.
Right. I thought it was alcohol. So I'd go to a few AA meetings and I'm like, this doesn't fit me at all. And so my sponsor, I had gotten a sponsor, and she said, I don't think this is your program. And she said, you need to try another one.
Did she know what that needed to be?
Well, she's the one who recommended going to SLAA, which Sex and Love, right? That was more prominent at the time than Sex Addicts Anonymous or Sex Addiction.
Okay.
And so, it was still unheard of. And I would be in a room full of mostly men.
I was going to say, I know, I have friends that have gone through the same program for the same reason, and it is very prominent in men.
So now, fast forward, when you go into an SLAA meeting, it's very mixed up, which is really great. But I didn't really connect with the way that the behaviors and the codependency part of sex and love.
Okay.
And so between me and my sponsor and on and off therapy and, banging my head against the wall going, this is still really messed up, I finally realized that I belonged in Sexaholics and Sex Addicts Anonymous because it was the act of sex where I was getting my emotional feeling from. And so, but, they pair in. So that's we moved back home. Me and my daughter moved back home when I was 23 years old. Wow. And I have been in that program since then, and I'm 56, almost 57 years old.
So, Andrea, most people think addiction is just alcohol or drugs.
Mm-hmm, they do.
And so it's interesting because it feels like that we got to where, okay, we got a little less scared to admit that. But then you hit sex addiction and it feels like, oh, are we even supposed to say that word?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dirty word.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to say that word?
Yes.
But we have to say that word.
We have to because, in women it looks different than it does in men.
Okay.
A man who's a sex addict is going to, be somebody that goes to stripper bars and looks at pornography online. Not that women don't do that, don't look at pornography online and things like that. But for women, the sexual side is also an emotional connection where men don't have that same thing.
Okay.
For a lot of times in sex addiction, it's about disconnecting and not connecting. And I think that people don't understand that. It's, because the act of sex is intimate, right? It's special with people. It's that. But when you're an addict in that area, it's about, no, I want to go home and be with my partner because I love and care about that person. But I cannot help acting out and looking for this thing elsewhere. But it's not about that I want to get connected with them. I gotta feed
whatever this desire is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's very confused, and I think that when AA first, 1956, oh my gosh, you go in the deep dark dungeon to have the meeting, right? Smoky room.
Yes.
Sex addiction, although we've had sex addiction meetings at our facility for 15 years, it's still very dark like AA was.
So it's
still very dark.
Behind it a little bit. Yeah.
Very dark. I mean, when you won't hear somebody get up and talk about their sexual addiction as openly as people who have their alcohol and drug addiction.
Okay.
A gambler will talk about it more, about their addiction more. Wow. I think that the next up and coming internet and technology, these things destroy lives in the background.
They do.
But when you talk about sex, it takes it to a whole new level. It's the oof.
Well, because it is such an intimate, with the person you love. Mm-hmm. And then what I feel like I'm hearing you say too is that part of the addiction has nothing to do with love. Except learning to love yourself, right?
Right.
Is that
right? And like in sex and love, people will use sex to get the love that they're looking for.
Right.
And then when that love says, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Thank you very much for the experience, but I'm still going to be like, but why? How come? Yeah. I can do this. Can I give money? I can, So when you mix those two things up, you hear about people, getting taken advantage of by having an online relationship and giving money and, all these online things. And that's love addiction because they're doing that to receive the love that they're looking for. So it gets really deep into our psyche because love and sex go together. But the activities of both can really be different.
Yeah, and sometimes get pigeonholed into one category when it has a whole separate need.
Right. And when you hear somebody, say, I'm a sex addict, what's the first thing that people think of? You're a pedophile.
Right.
You're a pedophile.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're two totally separate things. Yeah. They are so separate, and I think that that's why there's still so much darkness in that because it's the stigma of that, of being a pedophile for a man. I mean, heck, even now for women, you hear about teachers and things like that. So it's so dark.
And you use the word stigma. That is a word that I feel like when you talk about sex addiction or, or we talk about homosexuality, there is a stigma that comes with either of those words.
That's right.
We can talk about, as you mentioned, alcoholism or drug addiction or usage, and it's almost played down in comparison to other topics that are somewhat taboo to talk about.
Yeah, because, now the opioid epidemic, now everybody's talking about the drug and alcohol part of things. And so people are hearing it more, becoming more accepted to it, right? And the same with homosexuality and all of those.
Well, it's interesting to me to this point, though, is that what I have been interested in watching since I've been here is that we're in Preston Hollow.
Right.
So that stigma, we always think is the other side.
That's right.
Right? We think it's, what, our old school term would be the other side of the tracks.
Right.
We don't realize
that
it's both sides.
In an affluent area
That's right.
with much need and addiction.
Absolutely.
Right. And when you think of sex addiction, most sexual oriented services have to be paid for. So when you get into your affluent families and things like that, there's resources, unlimited most of the time, that don't get caught initially by a spouse or anything. But I have to mention this real quick, as far as spouses, because we are one of the only facilities that has an infidelity support group.
That's amazing.
It's women only right now. Some men have said, you need it for men, but right now it's women. And because marriages and relationships can survive it.
Oh, that's
They can survive.
That's the hope.
That's right.
Hope. That's the hope.
It can survive. It can survive. Somebody at our center just got married this year, and they both met at our center in the rooms, and they got married. So, as much despair as we can hear, there is so much that people will survive it, and marriages stay together, and it's not always hopeless.
I love it.
I do too. Andrea, thank you for your transparency. Wow, that's incredible, and your bravery to talk about it.
Would you take just it's time, I know, but would you take just 1 minute and just share your hope with someone that just needs to hear from you that they can do it?
So I think that, if I was talking to somebody, I'd say, think about in your moments of despair. Think about your moment of despair, sit with it for a minute, and think about what it could look like if you came through this. Just tomorrow. What tomorrow would look like if today you didn't pick up the drug, or today you didn't pick up the alcohol, or you didn't act out. Think about how you would feel tomorrow, because we've all had that feeling of going, I did it. Just think about that and just do it for 24 hours. Wow. Give yourself 24 hours and then pick it back up again tomorrow and think about what the next 24 hours could look like. Wow. I think that's what I try to tell people, because to think of doing it forever is too heavy of a burden.
It's daunting. That would be very daunting.
1 pound at a time.
That's right. That's right. And I live my life like that every day right now. So I'm not just preaching what we do at the. I have to live that every day. And some days I have to live hours at a time. Wow. And so, we try to really walk what we talk.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
This was incredible,
awesome.
And thank you for sharing and bringing transparency to a real subject that we all need to hear and that we need to be aware of. You're incredible, and we are so thankful for you. Thank you for being with us today, and I hope that today is a blessing for you and just opens a door for you to know you are not alone. The person that you may know in these circumstances, they're not alone either. There is never a place that God is not with you. Hope Connection. You brought a lot of hope, and we thank you for that. You can find us at llumc.org, or you can find us on any platform that podcasts are on. We look forward to seeing you again. God bless you, and we hope this week brings a lot of hope.